we're all in travel, and I thought I'd start with a quick story about how I'm sure, like me, you get asked a lot about your favorite place to travel to, and it's impossible. It's like choosing your favorite child. But the way I answer that question is often to say, I can tell you what travel I did that changed me the most. And that's a transformative travel experience. And I'm sure it's a word that'll come up a bit later today. And that was going to the Garma Festival in East Arnhem Land. And I spent a week with 1,000 Aboriginal people camping and on the lands of the Yolngu people. And it was hugely transformative for me and gave me a great appreciation for culture, a sense of place, and also just how astonishingly beautiful this country is. And I think there's a word that, a bit of Yolngu language that perhaps we all know that we don't realise, and that's Yothi Yindi. And Yothi Yindi, when you directly translate it, means mother and child. But what it really means is I learn from you and you learn from me. It's an exchange of knowledge and wisdom. And I think that's what we're all here for today. And so today, we're going to try and answer that great question. What is the future traveller? What do they look like? What are they going to do differently? And how are they going to do it? But more importantly, what does that mean for us? And how can we actually manifest that in our day-to-day lives? We've got an incredibly good panel today to help us navigate through that. And I want to just quickly touch on who they are, and then I'll come back and introduce them in more detail later. So first of all, we've got Aida Osta, who's the Global Travel Strategist at consultant at Detoured. And we've also then got our friend, I've got Joe Palmer, who's the Managing Director and founder of Gate 7, who's a representation agency. And then we also have Ed Mansfield, who's the Head of Design and UI UX at TRAVLR. And then final, Michelle Guthrie, who's a 30-year veteran of technology, investment, media, and she doesn't like me to say 30-year veteran very often, so that's the final time I'll mention that as well. They're going to help navigate our way through what's going to be a very important conversation today. So thought I'd set the scene for us about really the future of travel and some sort of assumed knowledge about where we are today. I think we all know that we are entering a new era. And when you enter a new era, you leave one behind and you start a new one. It's probably very pronounced, and it started in March 2020. No, very few times in history have we been able to see something start and finish on a very specific time point. And that means we'll be really looking towards what does that mean in the future. The other part of this is COVID has been an accelerant of change. Nothing's happened that has really revolutionised things just because of COVID. Many things were in train before COVID came along, and now they're accelerating that change. There's also pent-up demand. We all know that there's a significant amount of demand for travel experiences, more than really we've ever seen before, and there's greater spend in travel. I think there's also a prioritisation on experience. We know that people are seeking experiences, connection. Finally, I'd say there's regenerative and sustainable travel are the other realities that we know are more manifest than they've ever been before in the new era of travel and what that translates to for the future traveller. Finally, I wanted to make one comment, which is there are no real answers yet. We don't have specific answers to some of the questions we're facing, which is why today's panel is so important. So without further delay, I'm going to hand over to each of the panellists, and they're going to give us about 5 minutes of their wisdom on this specific topic, and then we'll be able to circle around and do the Q&A. And I wanted to quickly just encourage you, please ask questions. I'm not here for my own edification. You know, I've got a bunch of questions, but they're my questions. They're not your questions. I'm not a mind reader. Just ask my wife. I don't know what questions you want me to ask. So please use the Q&A function, and I'll do my best to get to each and every question. We will circle back to those questions after each panelist has given us their 5 minutes of pearls of wisdom in the beginning. So without further ado, I will now hand over to our first panelist, who's Aida Osta. Aida is a global travel strategist and consultant at Detoured. Aida has enjoyed more than 25 years experience in the travel industry, working with Air New Zealand, Go New Zealand, Hello World Travel, and Visit California before she founded Detoured, which is a boutique consultancy dedicated to global tourism strategy. So Aida is going to kick us off with addressing, where are travelers right now? What are the most pertinent trends and things that we should be thinking about? So I'll hand it over to you, Aida, and welcome.
Thanks so much, Quentin, and really appreciate the opportunity to join you guys today. Well, I mean, as you know, our lives have all been on hold for the last couple of years, and we all have a real drive for reconnection to family, friends, and the places that we used to travel before. And I think one of the great things that's come out of this last couple of years is that we no longer take the ability to travel freely for granted, and that's having an impact on what our travellers are thinking about right now. So whilst we might be travelling to wherever we can from Australia right now, we're also planning that fabulous trip of a lifetime for the future. So what's interesting about what's going on in travel at the moment is that we'll dive into what those journeys look like, and I guess how the priorities of the traveller have changed over the past few years, and how I believe they're going to change moving forward. So long before COVID, Quentin touched on it earlier, was that there was a significant shift away from cookie cutter package holidays, more towards highly personalised, customised itineraries that were largely passion-led and experience-based, and experiences have always been really important. Travellers were expecting more from their itineraries than sightseeing or prescriptive manufactured highlight reels in destinations. And they were really looking for opportunities to connect with local people, local operators, and activities that gave them that opportunity for a more authentic and immersive travel experience. And so that's been going for quite some time. But in the lead up to 2020, the desire for experience really evolved into a desire for transformation. And we've already had one fabulous example from Quentin today about a transformative experience he had in one of his earlier travel journeys. But this desire for transformation was really largely led by the adventure companies, the wellness, and the luxury sectors. And transformational travel, for those that are not familiar with the term, is travel that really intentionally is looking to a deeper and more significant travel experience, one that really enriches our lives, an experience that educates us and gives us an opportunity to change the way we see ourselves and how we engage with the world at the conclusion of that journey. So genuinely a real transformation. And so these travellers, transformational travellers, those looking for that sort of experience, tend to have a more holistic view of the experience. They take a more holistic view of their personal health and wellness and of the environment in general. And as such, they're concerned with issues of sustainability and their personal impact while they're travelling. And so that drive for transformational travel right now is strong. Travellers have really felt that they've lost the last 2 years of their lives through the pandemic. And so coming out of COVID restrictions, we're certainly seeing that real desire for such a deep experience, and in particular wellness travel is one of the things that we're seeing really coming back in abundance. But interestingly though, as we stop travelling for such an extended period of time in this COVID period, much attention was drawn globally to the positive impact of that reduced mobility on the natural environment. And we saw so many examples over the last couple of years of areas that really came into their own or were rejuvenated because there was a reduced mobility from the lack of travel. We also saw that climate change and social inequity were dominating global news, and that many local communities in Australia and around the world have been devastated by natural events. And so what this has really led to is, as Quentin mentioned earlier, it's an acceleration. So that this COVID period, through these circumstances, has accelerated, I guess, the growing importance of transformational travel. And it's indeed become the catalyst for how that's evolving. And it's going beyond the individual desire for personal growth and fulfillment, which is to a degree very me focused. It's how we're becoming better people from the travel that we undertake. And it's moving towards a relationship whereby the experience is reciprocal, and that's going to be very important. So our future traveller is really looking to play a part in leaving the place they travel to better than they found it. So they're seeking more of a feeling that's more than being transformed personally. They want to know that their travel and their decisions that they make around their travel, where their money is spent, will also positively impact others. So we're now moving now and into the future from transformational travel to something that we refer to as regenerative travel, or conscious travel, if you will. And that's a space that we really need to focus on moving forward, and what that really means for our travellers and how we cater for them from a retail perspective, from a destination or a hotelier perspective, etc. So this conscious traveller, they have an understanding of the impact of their travel, and they make really considered decisions regarding the destinations, the operators, the products and the experiences they choose, so that they really can have a tangible impact on the host community during their stay based on their actions or the decisions they've made about their money. There's a real focus on local populations and residents. There's a focus on inclusiveness, respect for local culture and customs, learning, protecting the community, the environment. And there's a real understanding that we're visiting people's homes. We're not travelling to a theme park. So travel has become and will become more of a cultural exchange and not just social capital. So we're not going to see our future travel being so obsessed with selfie tours and doing things for the gram and having a very me-centric experience. We'll be seeing more of that cultural exchange and a more inclusive participation from the traveller in their journey. So the future traveller that we want to be catering for is one that wants to understand where their money is going, and they'll hold the operators accountable. So their travel decisions will be based on their ability to positively impact that local community or environment by the choices that they make, and they will absolutely do their homework. They'll know which destinations, which airlines, which hotels or restaurants are delivering measurable and impactful programs that address things in their community, such things as ethical and local sourcing of food, local employment, any social conditions, support for environmental projects, those sorts of things. And so as Gen Z, I guess really the next generation of traveller, as Gen Z becomes more mobile and they become to travel more, these things are super important. So being able to know that their choices have positive impact on the community or the environment won't just now be a nice to have or an added bonus of the choices that we're making. It's going to become a prerequisite. And this is going to permeate through all of their travel choices, regardless of whatever the motivation is for the trip or whatever type of journey they take. They will be asking us those questions, they will be informed, and they will make those decisions accordingly. I have to say, though, I am really excited about this future traveller, where we as an entire travel community really have that opportunity in the future to make tangible changes and become a real force for good. So for me, the future traveller is one for all of us to get behind and to get very excited about accommodating. Thanks, Quentin. I hope that didn't go over too much.
You're right. About a minute over, but that's fantastic. I was enthralled. I think everyone else would have been enthralled as well. I can't wait to see all the questions pop in, because I've got loads of questions and comments, and you know, the idea of standard operating procedure now accommodates this, and it's just we don't do business without it is what I think is really interesting out of that. So thank you so much, Aida. I'm now going to pass over to Joe. Joe is the managing director, get your mouth around that long, managing director of tourism representation agency Gate 7. In 1998, Joe is inspired to work with people across the world, so she launched Gate 7, and through many years, Gate 7, those many years since, I should say, Gate 7 has evolved to deliver the full range of integrated marketing solutions that promote blue chip destinations and iconic tourism product to consumers, travel industry and media across Australia and New Zealand. So Joe, talk us through where we're at now and these new travellers.
Yeah, thanks so much, Quentin. And I just want to start by saying I wholeheartedly concur with what Aida just laid out. We're absolutely moving from an era of mass consumerism and bucket lists to conscious, holistic, sustainable choices. But it's not all altruistic. And of course, travellers want things for themselves too. They want to dive in deep. They want to experience things through local eyes. They want to indulge their passions. They want to learn, to immerse, to restore, to reconnect. And all of this is resulting in a global boom in demand for experiences, personalisation, luxury and wellness. Everybody's just wanting to reconnect with themselves and their loved ones, as well as now also being very conscious about the environment and the communities that they connect with. So ultimately, the new tourist wants the tourism experience to be transformational. Kind Traveller is an organisation that produces a global impact tourism report, and this reveals a range of ways in which this new demand is manifesting across the industry. So I thought we might take a look at some of those and just see how this is manifesting. SCP Hotels, for example, whose tagline is "Every Stay Does Good." Alana might just proceed to the next slide if we can. Every Stay Does Good has an initiative where every hotel stay provides one adolescent with wellbeing tools and resources to build lifelong mental health skills. So you can see that's not directly related to the tourism industry, but it supports the communities around them. Many hotels across the world are redirecting their unused food that was destined for landfill and partnering now with local charities to serve those in need. One of those is like Terranea Resort in Los Angeles, who are partnering with Chefs to End Hunger. Of course, major hotel brands like Accor are also paving the way with initiatives like their Planet 21. This includes increased use of solar panels, water harvesting, planting trees, combating sexual exploitation of children, integrating eco-design into their properties, employing sustainable food practices, and developing local supply chains. We all know that boutique hotels are booming, and one such example is the Elwood Hotel and Suites in Lexington, Kentucky. You can see here from their positioning that they aim to be an immersive tribute to contemporary Southern lifestyle and support the communities they're a part of. And one fabulous initiative that they ran to do this saw them partner with a local non-profit who supports the arts. They ran a competition for local artists, and then the winning design is now displayed as a beautiful floral exterior mural to the hotel. So you can see that sort of holistic partnership that they have to encourage the arts in their local community and develop pride from the local community in the way that art is helping visitors to immerse and understand the destination. Moving to Turkey, at the Six Senses Hotel in Istanbul, guests can do recycling workshops so they themselves get involved, where amongst other things they'll transform used cooking oil into candles and soaps. So again, recycling, but creating an immersive educational experience for the hotel guests themselves. This new demand from the traveller is also giving an elevated role to charities and collectives as they launch tourism experiences that motivate responsible travel. One such example of a collective is the Untourist movement in Amsterdam. This is a growing community of over 200 social entrepreneurs, non-profits, accommodation and other change makers who are collectively providing opportunity for tourists to get off the beaten path, connect and participate and make tourism a sustainable force for good in a city that has at times in the past been overrun by tourism. Much closer to home, Wander is a beautiful new tourism brand that's firmly in this transformational travel space. Their founder was a hotel interior designer and grew sick of greenwashing and token sustainability efforts. She's completely passionate about Australia and our heritage and really wanted to make a difference, helping Australians in the world connect with country. She's designed and created a network of locally made Wander pods, individually sitting in spectacular isolated land across Australia. On the environmental side, the off-grid pods showcase and educate on sustainable practices with both old and new technologies. And on the community, culture and heritage side, Wander is actively developing partnerships with local groups to develop immersive, authentic and transformational customer experiences, celebrating culture, story and practices of the people who make up these beautiful ecosystems. So through all of this change, and especially as we now have the opportunity to rebuild tourism in a different way, the role of the tourism board has been transformed. It's transformed from destination marketer to destination stewards. Their key role is not now to maximise tourism, but rather to maximise the long-term benefits of tourism to the destination, the environment and its people. A comprehensive example of destination stewardship is the now approved development of the Koara precinct in Port Macquarie. This nature-based tourism precinct will be vitally important for the rehabilitation and breeding of wild koalas. and will equally showcase the local Biripi culture, supporting Bunya local Aboriginal Land Council run businesses, while also providing experiences like treetop walks to connect with the local environment and promote sustainability. And then one final example I'll just squeeze in of destination stewardship is the Malama Hawaii program. This volunteerism program encourages travellers to give back and leave the Hawaiian Islands better than they were found in exchange for free nights or hotel discounts. So there's obviously loads more, Quentin, that I could go into, but this is just a little taste of how this new traveller demand is both being catered to and I think importantly propagated by the travel industry to ensure our collective long-term viability. Nice. So back over to you.
Thanks, Jo. That's amazing. I was lucky enough to work on a Malama piece of work, and it is such an interesting development in one of the world's greatest tourism destinations, and it's great to see their leadership there. There is another one that I'd quickly mention there, is if anyone's looking for it, it's the Tiaki Promise in New Zealand. Also really worth looking at. But Jo, I just love that you gave us all heaps of concrete examples, which helps everybody. I also want to do a quick shout out to Alistair at the BBC, who asked the first question on the Q&A. Gold star to Alistair. Welcome to all our latecomers who I haven't been able to welcome. So please come on in and make sure you ask questions in the Q&A. We will come back to them after our two next panellists. So thank you, Jo. Over to our next panelist, who is Edward Mansfield. Ed is a seasoned UX UI designer and digital innovation specialist with more than 25 years experience building award-winning digital products for world-renowned brands and Fortune 500 E's. I'm going to hand over to Ed, and he's going to talk about how does this new traveller then translate into the path to purchase? How does that look like in a digital? What does that look like in a digital environment? And what should travel providers be thinking about and looking at their path to purchase user journeys? Over to you, Ed.
Hey, thank you very much, Quentin, and thank you very much to everyone for joining as well. So my name is Edward Mansfield. I am the head of experience at TRAVLR, and the way that I describe my role here is I'm essentially the CSI investigator, right? I do a lot of investigation and analysis of what customers are doing within all of our platforms, what their behaviors are. And then I also attempt to just sort of get into their heads and understand the why, right? So at the core of everything that I do, I believe that the customer is at the center of every business decision or strategy that we should pursue. And the best way to do that is to understand the customer journey. The path to purchase is part of that journey as well. And what we would do is basically define what that journey is, all the way from, quote, the dreaming phase, at the very, very start of that journey, all the way through booking and purchasing and actually going on the trip. And then what we do is redefine that journey and then redefine that journey again and again. Because over time, what we've all known, having been in this industry for quite a while, that the journey that existed 2 years ago is a bit different today due to a variety of environmental circumstances, market conditions, COVID, for example, other reasons, sustainability, and it'll likely be different in 2 years from now. So the thing that I want to reinforce in everyone's mind is that we're always learning about our customers. There's never going to be a point in time where we're going to say, yep, we know everything about our customers. We don't need to learn anything more. Let's move on with some initiatives. The reality is things evolve over time, and there's a constant learning that has to happen about our customers and their needs and motivations to booking travel experiences. Now, at TRAVLR, we tend to focus most of our investments, our talents, and our initiatives on the customer journey to essentially optimize the various stages that our customers, or all of our customers, go through when they're thinking about, dreaming about a trip, planning a trip, booking a trip. Alana, if you can just show the slide. Yep. So this is at a high level, the customer journey. I believe most of us are familiar with these. They come in various flavors, but essentially there are 5 stages. The dreaming part, this is when people are kind of kicking the tires and trying to get inspiration about where they want to go to next. Planning is when they start to get a bit more express a little bit more of a commitment towards, booking specific trips, whether they're looking at dates and things of that nature. And in the booking process, those first three phases is essentially the path to purchase. So at TRAVLR, we've been optimizing various components of actually all 5 of these phases. But I think for purposes of this discussion, we're talking about things like a scalable content management system, where we're able to create personalized and curated content based on brands or based on products, and potentially in the future based on specific individuals and market segments. From a planning perspective, we've got a flexible booking system, and sort of the utilization of buy now, pay later payments, which as we all know has become a hot topic over the past year, which is primarily a budgeting tool for people to sort of take those aspirational trips and then pay that over time. The curated travel advice, very, very important in the dreaming and planning phase of the customer journey. Those are things that we've recognized in some of our observations in our data, as well as through customer feedback. And so amplifying that sort of content for our customers helps them sort of make that decision and then proceed through that purchase funnel. And last but not least, the concierge service that we offer, which you could probably equate to be a bit more of a hand glove and more traditional travel agent sort of service, where if there are issues, we can provide that solutions to our customers kind of in real time and on the spot. So the takeaway that I'd love to bring to everyone today, you're going to hear a lot about trends, what people are looking for. What I tend to focus on is the how. How can we all capitalize on these trends and create the best experience for our customers that would ultimately increase the likelihood of converting on your respective property. So I'm happy to talk more about some of the hows. So if you have some questions about how can I do that, please ask Quentin. But we'll probably talk a little bit more about that further down the webinar. Cheers.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Ed. Amazing. I do have so many questions about the path to purchase, and is it linear or is it not, and all those sorts of things, and how do you actually deliver curated content at the right time. But we better get to our next panelist, and our next panelist is Michelle Guthrie. She's a media and technology executive of X amount of years of experience, because I'm not allowed to say how many years experience anymore, am I, Michelle? She's been with organizations like Google in Asia, Star TV, BSkyB, Foxtel. She was also, you may know her as the managing director of the ABC here in Australia. So she's well known amongst the media circles. She's been across everything from media, entertainment, funds management, technology, and professional services. She's forgotten more than we could ever know about the topic of media and generally how it affects our lives. And Michelle, I'm going to throw to you to talk about how does this all intersect, the new traveller, the new paths to purchase in an media environment, and what's the role of media?
Thanks so much, Quentin, and thank you for not saying the 30 years thing. It's actually probably more than 30 years, but we'll keep it at that. I really want to build on what Aida and Joe talked about in terms of really the importance of storytelling and really the need for the traveller to be captured by the destination story. I mean, they know a lot more about travel than I'll ever know. But it is really looking at the future traveller around that need for kind of immersion into that experience before they decide to book. And, I think it's pretty clear that post-COVID, we're all looking for that connection and engagement, but we're also, much more concerned to make sure that experience is as great as possible. I loved, when Aida talked about the, fabulous trip of a lifetime. And then building on what Ed said about the customer experience online. And, the thing that brings all of this together, both the storytelling and the customer experience, is really the importance of media in that audience engagement and the opportunity to really evolve that media experience and audience engagement through travel. When you look at, frankly, all of the content, being consumed during lockdown, audiences have really developed a much deeper appreciation and connection with media content than ever before. And now that borders are open, and we're allowed to travel, it's really a unique opportunity for media companies to build on that connection that they have. So, when you look at media brands, they already have an engaged audience who love their content. And now is really the time post-COVID to explore new opportunities to bring that content to life and to really build a deeper connection to their audiences, to lead audiences to unique travel experiences. I think that the thing that most media companies won't really acknowledge, it's kind of the hidden, the little secret, is that most media audience data is actually pretty limited. When I started in free-to-air TV, and you look at the ratings information that everyone sweats on from the night before, that's done with a sample of in some cities several hundred people, and so when you think about what people are looking for in terms of connection, media companies are looking for in terms of connection to audiences, they don't, in many instances, don't really have a two-way connection. Even newspapers online, if you're not logged in, the companies don't know who you are. So you're coming in with an IP address, and that's where I learned a lot from my time at Google. That if you don't know the demographics of the people who are consuming your content, if you don't know what their consumer behaviour is, the sorts of things they're interested in, it means that actually your ability to connect with them is pretty limited. And so media companies are very much looking to capture much more specific audience behaviours and demographics. And, frankly, with all of the advertising revenue that's gone to Google and Facebook, that frankly is not coming back, they also need to branch out and retain their customer for longer and build new revenue streams. A number of media companies are looking to build audience, engagement and revenue streams through subscription, but ultimately, I think they need multiple revenue streams to replace the advertising revenue that they really relied on in the past. And frankly, that's what attracted me to TRAVLR, which really kind of partners travel with media brands to bring those experiences to life, all in the voice, look and feel of the brand. I mean, there's the one thing that media companies are very good at is developing their amazing content and connecting it to the brand. So that, I used to joke that, with our Star entertainment channel in India, all in Hindi, because we had such popular programs that were really connected to the Star Plus brand in India, the way in which we could launch a new program on that channel where it would be almost immediately successful. Whereas if we put it on another channel, you'd have to go and find it. So it is about, having that content and audience connection, being reinforced, not just, on screen, but also online. And so, when you look at an ability to have the opportunity to kind of storytell the experiences, develop an itinerary, and then, continue that unique brand voice. So you're not moving off that kind of branded environment. I think that's where there's a massive opportunity for media companies.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Michelle. That was a lovely sort of wrap up of where the media intersects with the new path to purchase, in particular travel, because you have media companies that have needs that they really need to make their brand loyalty and their audiences stick a lot harder, and they need to find out more. And maybe this is a potential solution to that. In many, one of many potential solutions. Let's be honest, there's so many different things that media companies are trying to do. Just ask me. We're all trying to understand our audiences better and better and better, competing against things like Google and Facebook, which is impossible. And I think we all understand that. But thank you to the whole panel. That was a fantastic sort of 25 minutes of understanding where the future traveller is. Joe, you're fantastic with your examples. Aida kicked it off with understanding where we are as an industry, and Ed looking at how that is starting to play out in the digital environment. And obviously Michelle the media environment. I've got one question before I jump into mine, and I'm going to quickly ask it. It's for you, Aida, but I think anybody can answer it, and it comes from Alistair at BBC Global News. Thank you very much, Alistair. It says, thanks, Aida, for laying down the vision of the future traveller. What evidence are you seeing that supports the vision, and any thoughts on what proportion of the whole travel market this new traveller segment will represent? I think this really goes to that point, which is this a real fundamental shift in the entire travel market, or are we actually looking at, and just to sort of pare it back for our audience or explain it? I think, Aida, this is really focusing on the idea of regenerative and sustainable and decision making about how I choose travel and what the impacts of my money will be. Is this going to be mass market? Is it going to be niche market? Will it be the domain of only the elite few who have the wealth to care and education to be able to execute?
Okay.
Not a small question, I know, sorry, Aida, but over to you and anyone else can pick it up.
That's okay. I'll start off, and then if anybody else wants to jump in. I think when we look at the future, it's going to become more and more important, and whether it's important to every traveller today, we're not there yet. But I guess the topic today was looking at the future and our future travellers, and very much in the future we have our Gen Z travellers, where all of these issues are incredibly important to them now and will become more important to them as they have the opportunity to impact their environment by the decisions they make. There are operators now who are already operating in the space, and Joe mentioned a few of them, and one I'll come back to, I guess, is Kind Traveller. So looking at regenerational travel, it doesn't need to be in the realm of just luxury or just adventure or whatever. It does cross all sectors. A business like Kind Traveller, I had the pleasure of meeting them and working with them when they first launched a couple of years back. They will work with their local hoteliers to identify what programs they're already doing within their properties. And right across hotels and destinations around the world, everybody is doing something that's going to impact the local community. They're either removing single-use plastics, or they are supporting a mentor program for the local village, or something like that. They're doing something that supports their community or the environment at large. And so a business like Kind Traveller has gone out, identified those businesses, those hotels that have really substantiated programs that are aimed at their local community, and they've included them on their platform, and it's a give and get platform. So even passively, anybody who wants to even step their foot in this or show a bit of commitment to the future of sustainable travel can go onto their booking platform, and they give and get. So they give a minimum of $10 to book one of these properties, and that $10 is donated to a local cause of your choice. And so they've already negotiated with either the destination or the hotel 2 or 3 causes where the money will be going to. So as a traveller, you are giving $10, you're already having an impact on the local community because your money's going to a local cause. And what you're getting back is then a discounted rate and extra inclusion. So it's a win-win. And so you've got these organisations that are thinking, I guess, laterally about how you can make this part of the conversation now and have people contribute to their local environments and a lesser footstep, I guess, when they're travelling, without it having to be this big change the entire world thing. It's small steps to make bigger changes. That's part of the answer.
Yeah, Joe, did you want to add anything to that?
I think this is part of what I was talking about with the destination stewardship piece. So what you found during COVID is obviously travel changed enormously, and you had huge pressure on these day trip type destinations. You've got increased pressure on, accommodation, like living costs to get workers in to be able to look after the increase and the influx of day trippers, for example. So the destination stewardship responsibility that tourism boards have is really to grow the amount of travellers and to nurture the amount of travellers who are focused on this new traveller kind of qualities and values. It's one thing to just maximise the number of visitors there, but it's another thing to really be selecting and thinking consciously about who you want to attract, who you want to nurture, and make sure you're getting the best value traveller that you can get that gives back to your environment, your community, and helps to sustain. And that goes for, not just looking at weekend travel. You want to, like, how can we get people in during the week? How can we really spread this out so it's sustainable for the longer term? So I think directly, the percentage of people who are already thinking that way is growing and will continue to grow as Gen Z comes through. But I think it also is our responsibility as an industry to understand that we need this to be sustainable in the longer term, and we need to be designing how growth rolls out.
Yeah, I love that. Joe, love both your responses, but you reminded me that, you've got to have a strategy for what kind of traveller do I want.
Yeah.
And that becomes the strategy of, I want these conscious travellers. I want these people who want to value this, who want to understand this. Tourism Australia did a great job of this in the early days, really, when they sought out the high value traveller, because they knew that would actually put the least amount of pressure on the environment and deliver the greatest amounts of returns. And those returns are now changing and how we measure those. But which really does raise the point, and Joe and Aida, you both kind of touched on this. Is this industry-led? Is this consumer-led? And how does that work? And that has ramifications for whole other things, which I'll get to in a sec.
Maybe I'll just start by, it's both. It's absolutely both. I think even if we're just thinking purely as an industry without a very rational, financial, very right-wing kind of approach to it, it makes sense for us to be thinking holistically, because otherwise we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're destroying. The last tourist film, I think we're sharing that as a resource at the end of the webinar. Is great for everybody to look at if they haven't seen it already, but it really highlights this thing that, if we let tourism continue the way it was going, it will destroy the very thing that's attracting them in the first place. So it's unsustainable for us as an industry. But certainly there's no doubt that our beautiful youth are very much more concerned about this than our parents were, and that, that's moving in the right direction from a generational perspective.
And Quentin, I think I'd add that you'll probably find it's community-led as well, as more destinations are really engaging with their local communities in the design and the messaging around tourism as well. So it is very much a multi-level thing. Yeah,
it's interesting. Two quick stories. I had a really long conversation with the guys at Rotorua who are very determined to make sure that they emerge from COVID as a very different destination, based on the idea of, let's be very deliberate about which travellers we're going to attract and what the value of that is to us as a community. Not negating the problems that they have where the industry is so needy of those travellers. They really wanted to make sure they attracted the right travellers. The second one I'd give you is I was lucky enough to do a quick presentation to a group of high-end travel advisors. And one of the people, when I was talking about regenerative travel, put their hand up and said, but none of my clients have ever asked for this. And I think the response has to be, have you asked them? Have you led them? Are you doing the right thing to make sure that they understand what positive impacts they can have and what differences they can have? And I think that's incumbent on the industry as well. I was really interested in Ed's conversation around, the path to purchase, Ed. And I've often said to people, conversion rate optimization can be problematic because you can refine things and lose sight of the real outcome. And I'm wondering, do you think media companies may be able to partner with someone like TRAVLR and become a real threat to the OTA environment? Because in the back of my mind, let's be honest, I kept thinking people will always end up on an OTA, an online travel agency, if you're not aware of what that means. They'll always end up on an OTA just to check the prices. And so I'm wondering how you would address that and what your thoughts are around that.
Oh, 100%. And it's very timely that we're talking about, COVID and the impact that it has had on people's appetite for booking trips and so on and so forth. Because what we've seen, and I think we can all appreciate it, because if you think about it, we're all travelers as well. So we are our own customers. Over the past couple of years, it's not that people don't want to travel, it's that they can't, right? Due to border restrictions and a variety of other external factors. But just because you can travel, does that mean you can't, dream about traveling, right? And so what we've seen over the past couple of years is kind of the needle moving in the direction that a lot of customers, including myself, I do this all the time. I start to just look around. I may not be able to take a trip, but I'll start to, dream about a destination or dream about an experience that I've never been to, right? And so when we start talking about, in your example, everyone's, price comparison shopping across different platforms, you've got the Expedias and the Booking.coms and so on and so forth. The one thing that I want to reemphasize, which goes back to the customer journey that I had mentioned earlier, those large organizations invest a lot of their resources and money in building out the booking platform, the booking part of that customer journey. They completely neglect the dreaming and the planning part of it. And I think that's where the rest of us, the smaller players, quote unquote, have the greatest opportunity, is to lean into our strengths, lean into, to Michelle's point, the storytelling aspect of it. When you tell stories, that feeds directly into that kind of dreaming phase that the other guys, the big guys, can't compete against us with. So to a traveler, at the end of the day, as a customer, they're really thinking about value. Is the value that I'm going to get from this trip worth the cost? And if cost is purely a factor, then yes, they're going to jump on these other websites to just compare prices. But there's a bit of a secret in that equation, right? Value has a cost component, but there's also a benefit, a perceived benefit, perceived value component, which is entirely something that we all as marketers and travel agents have control over by amplifying that perceived value, right? A sense of exclusivity, a sense of uniqueness. If we can amplify that perceived value, the cost almost comes out of the equation, because it portrays that this experience is not something that I can get anywhere else. So there's no point in me going to Expedia or Booking to see what it costs, because I won't be able to find it. It's an illusion, right, in people's heads. And that's just the thing that we can tap into. And one of the examples that I can think of, which we've done, which really taps into that dreaming phase. And I'd love for Michelle, you to talk about the storytelling aspect of it as well. But we recently launched a travel experience for Nickelodeon called Nick Travel. And I'll just give you an example just really quickly, just to show you what we're talking about. So rather than, if we go to, there should be where is it? Yeah, scroll backwards. Yeah, go that and one more. There we go. Click on the Explore package link. So what we've done is, rather than create your cookie cutter experience where we just have a bulleted list of descriptions, a price and a book now button, what we're leading with is more of kind of that immersive storytelling experience to really tap into that dreaming, right? And the dreaming phase for customers transcends time. Typically, it's not, travel isn't an impulse purchase where you see a trip and you book it. It happens, but not very often. And so what we've decided to do is really lean into kind of the storytelling of what this experience is, having a bit of rich media and photography and imagery and content that really talks about the experience, right? And if you just go down a little bit, I wanted to just show you the fourth option. I believe it's the Daydream Island one, right? If you think about the types of photos that you want to show, the example that I always give is if you're trying to sell a car, would you want to show a picture of a car sitting in a parking lot, on a kind of dreary day, or do you want to show a photo of perhaps someone driving down a windy road, really experiencing that, right? So in the travel world, rather than just show stock photos of a room, a stock photo of perhaps a fish, what we want to do is introduce, some human elements to it. So if you think about Nick Travel, we're really targeting parents who want to purchase a trip for their children. They're thinking about their children's experience. And in this particular example, what better way to do that by illustrating children experiencing, this particular trip. And so subconsciously, customers are looking at this and they're probably putting their children in the shoes of those in the photo there and creating an emotional connection. It's subconscious, but that emotional connection ties into the dreaming. It ties into the storytelling, which, as I mentioned, to answer your question, Quentin, it's not something that the Expedias and the Booking.coms do very well, or if at all. And so I like to say, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. There's no way that we can all compete against the investments that Expedia has made in their booking system. But the competitive advantage that we all have is to really tap into that dreaming phase.
Excellent. You did say Michelle will add to that. So Michelle, off you go. Yeah.
I will. That is a kind of perfect example of that storytelling. I mean, it's really Nickelodeon's IP, and they're creating ultimate experiences for families, which, they already know their audiences will love, and you can't get it elsewhere. I think the kind of key thing is that you'll see from that example is really that this is Nickelodeon's platform. They're retaining audiences within Nickelodeon's ecosystem, and then there's a clear path from the content to the real life experiences, right? So having all of that within your own site is just incredibly valuable for media companies. I mean, one thing I didn't talk about was really the death of the cookie, right? As we move from needing first-party data, that first-party data is critical to maintaining that relationship with your consumer. So you're not relying on sending people elsewhere and then figuring out, well, did they buy something or not? It all happens within your own ecosystem. And TRAVLR enables that, but does it, in the background. So the key thing is around having that storytelling, but also that path to purchase. And I very much agree with what Ed said around having that kind of uniqueness. So having a package that includes tickets to the MTV Video Music Awards and staying at MTV's hotel of choice. The description of these kinds of experiences is, to kind of nick the credit card term, priceless, right? And so you're trying to create things that you can't kind of get down to the lowest common denominator, because there is none, right? It is about kind of elevating that as an overall experience.
It's really interesting because there is this problem where you cannot compete with the sharks at the OTA level, right? As a media company, I cannot do it, and I never do it. And every time that the OTAs come to me and say, please put my booking widget on your site and I will give you a clip of the revenue, the first question I ask is, who gets the customer information? Oh, no, you don't get it. No, we'll keep that, thank you very much. That is absolutely the antithesis of what I need. How do you guys deal with that? And obviously you're going to tell me, don't worry, we got it sorted, it's great. But the second part of that is that I don't know whether I want that relationship with I don't know whether I want them to call me and say, my hotel is flooded, my hotel is not, they haven't got my booking. That customer relationship management, I want the customer data, I don't want the hassle. What do I do? Please, somebody tell me, and I'll leave that to anybody on the panel. But Michelle, you're nodding vigorously.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, when you think about TRAVLR as a kind of travel tech expert, it really manages the concierge experience, the customer experience, and all of that is done in the brand voice of the media company itself, right? So all of that is kind of taken care of.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't want to make it too much of an ad for TRAVLR, but it is taken care of. Honest to God truth is what I do every time I talk to Booking or Expedia and they want to bung their booking engine on my site. It's absolutely not going to happen. Cool. All right. Well, that was fantastic, guys. I really appreciate that. I'm going to quickly just circle back to you, Aida and Joe. I love the idea of the stewardship of a DMO. I love that we're now caring, but I do feel what I think was, a bit of a problem, which is the mass market versus the non-mass market and seeking out the right traveller. Are DMOs, are they going to be able to be resourced appropriately? Are they going to be able to change their KPIs? And, thinking about someone like Ed, the KPIs on him will have to change a bit as well. It's not just on transaction volumes, right? So what is the future of the DMOs?
Well, that's a big question, Quentin.
I asked the big one. Sorry, I'm trying to help.
Something up here.
And you've got 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, you got less than that. You got about 30
look,
seconds, and I'll keep running around.
Essentially, I can say that it's a very active conversation again amongst all of my DMO client base. It's a very active conversation. It's not sort of a little aside. It's front and centre. And I think the key there is integration, at that highest government levels, almost across different organisations coming together to have a holistic plan for the whole town. Port Macquarie is a really good example of that.
Yeah.
I think, the council's working in together with forestry, is working together with the Aboriginal Lands Council. And it really does start, I think, at the top in thinking of things from a holistic perspective, and allowing that to trickle down, which sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? And it is.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely the way to go. Is it needs to be a really conscious,
Deliberate.
ongoing effort.
Yeah. There's a really interesting saying that, human beings will not change until it is too painful not to. And have we reached that point, do you think? Anybody, by the way?
Well, I can certainly say amongst my clients there are definite pain points. Lake Tahoe, for example. So, California's closed down, well, the whole world's closed down. But you can imagine the day trippers then all of a sudden, people who used to travel around the world, they're a 3 or 4 hour drive from the snowfields. They're going in there. The locals literally started campaigning to stop people to come in. So they're well and truly hit tipping point in some places around the world. I think it particularly for rural destinations that are within a 3 hour drive of gateway cities, that's where the pain points are, and have been over the last 2 years, and have certainly tipped this conversation from being a nice to have to being an absolute imperative.
Yeah. And Quentin, I might just leverage off that actually and come back to the whole mass market conversation that we've had a couple of times today. I mean, these things are real and they are happening, and we have to find a way where mass tourism is also taken care of, as well as niche tourism. But we've had a couple of questions around whether something like regenerative travel is going to have any impact on mass tourism. And I think for a final remark from me, I really wanted to say that it was this is something that's going to permeate all travel and all tourism, because we can't change or stop younger people from caring and giving a damn, and they really care. And they are looking for, and will be looking for, options where they can at least feel as though they've had some impact. So if you had a basic Bali drop and flop holiday, and you had 2 hotels or 2 products that was offering the same thing, the same standard, the same pricing, your next traveller is going to choose the one that's got a program of feeding the local community, or has got a program of doing something in the local community, or a sustainable program. And each of these properties, as I said, are doing something, and Michelle would attest to the fact that it's in the storytelling that we will learn how big regenerative travel is when we start to hear the stories being told around the place, because everybody's doing something. So, as I said, we don't have a choice. We cannot stop the next generation from making that a priority, and I believe that that's what they will be doing.
Great final comments. Thank you much, Aida. And you've reminded me that I'm almost out of time, so I'll quickly, Joe, final comments. You have 15 seconds, sorry.
Go forth in peace and be good to yourself and others.
Oh my God. Excellent. All right, I'm just getting problems with my internet now, which is fantastic. Michelle, your final comments?
Everything has changed, and it's all about making sure that you tell the stories of and helping the dreaming, but also can fulfill that at the same time, and that's where media comes in.
Yeah, Ed.
Well, if there's one takeaway for everyone to think about, remember, think about our customers, empathize with what they're thinking, what they need. What we see with COVID, as I mentioned, if you can't travel doesn't mean you stop thinking about traveling. YOLO and FOMO, right? Those are the 2 big kind of trends, I suppose, that I've seen over the past year. Just live in the moment, fear of missing out, and the experiences that cater and that feed into kind of that YOLO feeling. will likely be more successful than kind of your cookie cutter kind of travel experiences. So YOLO FOMO.
YOLO FOMO, what a great way to end. Thank you so much to the excellent panel. Thank you, Aida. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Ed and Michelle. I've really enjoyed the conversation today. I really hope our audience at home have enjoyed it as well. It's been my great pleasure. My name is Quentin Long. Great pleasure to be your MC for the day. If you are about TRAVLR, I thought I should actually just let you know who TRAVLR are and what they do. TRAVLR is a revolutionary technology provider that consolidates the global travel industry into one seamless platform via its unique travel as a service model. The company licenses its full service travel platform to the world's leading media companies, including Nickelodeon, as we've talked about today, and the BBC, and a few others, enabling their audiences to discover, plan, and book curated travel experiences. And on that note, I'd like to say farewell. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great conversation, and I hope everyone has some happy travels over Easter and stay safe. Thanks again.